Hi everybody, I am Adrienne with FE3 Integrated Fitness, and I am here with Mark Valenti from BlindDog and RefinedSavage.
RefinedSavage.
RefinedSavage. How dare I? You guys got so much going on, it's hard for me to get it all together. I wanted to kind of interview Mark because Mark interviews everybody. So I thought it would be kind of cool to get Mark's story out there. And I'm sure you have in the things that you've done, but not in one space, you know, and kind of get out what happened and what's going on. And I look up to you, you know, I like what you do out here. You have the strongman gym, which is awesome. You know, I only can have pieces and parts of that in my gym because not everybody looks for that out there.
Yeah.
But I wanna do your story. So I want to introduce all of you guys to him. A friend of mine, as well as, you know, he actually helped get me ready for my first strongman competition by letting me use his gym and testing my overhead log presses, which was fun. That was fun, interesting. But I did it. So, Mark, tell me about you. How did you get started into working out and fitness and all that stuff? How far down the road?
Yeah, so grew up playing all the sports, just like all kids. You know, from being little, doing soccer and karate, and then got into wrestling and football and that kind of stuff. And I kind of realized at a young age that the training is what was going to take me to the next level. I wasn't one of these freak athletes that could do a lot of stuff. So in the 80s, you know, I saw the guys on TV, like, you know, the pro wrestlers, the road warriors and guys like that. I just decided I'm going to start lifting weights and see how that does with my athletics. And it just became part of me. I started training when I was like 12 years old, got bigger and stronger than the other kids, especially because back then there wasn't a lot of people lifting weights yet, especially not any kind of regimented, you know, there was no schools that had their own programs or anything like that. So I started training and noticed that the more I trained, the stronger I got, the better I played. And that's an ongoing theme for a lot of athletes. And so I got more and more into the training aspect of it, started throwing the shot and discus in high school. And then about midway through high school, like my sophomore year, I found amateur Highland Games, got into that. Turned professional sometime in my 20s, 25, 26, and had a 17-year career throwing professionally. So I got to go all over the world and throw logs and stones in people's yards. They would actually pay you to do it. So it was a crazy sport. So you know, it was a professional sport. So they would pay you to go on trips. So this weekend you're going to Seattle, and you would go to Seattle and you would throw at a festival, and they would pay for everything, and then they would give you prize money at the end. And then, you know, the next weekend you're in Portland, and the next weekend you're in Toronto. And so that's what I did for a big portion of my adult life. And then when I retired from that, I got into a little bit of strongman. I didn't like the competing as much, especially because there wasn't any money involved with it, so it's kind of hard to motivate yourself. But I learned that you could use a lot of the stuff I was doing in Highland Games and a lot of stuff I was doing in strongman and bring it into a facility like this, where you're looking for an all-encompassing form of fitness that is fun and measurable, and it's functional. I know that's kind of a buzzword these days, but a lot of functional fitness isn't exactly functional. I think the stuff we do here is about functional as you can get, and so that's kind of how I got to this point was through Highland Games and a little bit of strongman.
Yeah, I think when you say functional, to me, I understand your concept of that because of all the stuff that I do, but I think in terms of functional, you take it back to primal pattern.
We call the program prime.
Yeah. And it should, because it's pushing, pulling, lifting, you know, your basic stuff, and people forget overhead.
Yeah.
Overhead is important, and it's kind of interesting how they took that out of Olympic lifting in America, because there's so many shoulder injuries and stuff that they took it out, but actually doing it properly stops you from getting injured with it.
Sure.
So I think, and I like using more of the free weights and that kind of stuff versus the machines for that reason. My experience, especially with older people, they come in and they think they're strong because they can do something on a leg press, or they can do something on a machine, but then you give them a light weight and they can't control it.
Yeah.
So I think that, this type of training is amazing as far as that goes, and I think it's necessary because we are primal.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're like, I told you earlier, you're like the closest thing to a caveman I can find nowadays. I love this.
There's a lot of Neanderthal DNA.
There's a lot. It's called Viking blood.
Yeah.
So what made you decide to open the facility itself? Like, what made you come in and say, you know what, this is where I'm gonna take it because I feel people need it?
Yeah, I was a corrections officer for 19 years, and as I was thrown on the Highland Games circuit, and I was kind of training people out of my 20 by 20 garage with no heat and no AC or anything like that, and the roof leaked. And when I met my wife, she was she had qualified for regionals in CrossFit, and she kind of said, why are you training people out of this shitty garage? Why don't we actually open up a place? So we found like 1,000 square foot building in downtown Amherst, Ohio, and we opened it up there. And we walked over with 12 clients. I think about 4 of them were actually paying me at the time. So it was kind of a leap of faith. But within a year, or was it even less than a year, I had to quit my job because we had so many clients that I couldn't work my normal job and train people, and I ended up quitting my job and then retiring from Highland Games and just doing this full time. And it's been a constant evolution for me over the years through our training, and actually it's basically been whittling it back to those basic primal movements that everyone should be able to do. You should be able to lift a stone out of your garden. You should be able to run. You should be able to bear crawl across the floor and things like that. So the further we go down this journey, the more and more crap we whittle away. And it's the more we whittle away, the better it seems to get for us. So I'm having a good time with it.
Yeah, I agree. I think basic movements are the key. We in every sport or every way of lifting weights, you have your basics. In the other side, you have squat, dead, bench, to me, pull up, and overhead press.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so it's the same. It's the same over here. I do like the fact that you're doing the crawling and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people don't do the crawling. And also the shape of the objects. It's not always a bar.
Yeah.
So I think that that's really cool too. How did you come up with Blind Dog?
So we had one. My dog, Cordelia, was a Australian cattle dog, and I've always had Australian cattle dogs. You'll see the poster behind the desk over there of Mad Max, and he had that in the road where he had the little Australian cattle dog. And Cordy was my first one. Adopted her, and she was like my best friend forever. And she used to go out into the garage, a 20 by 20 garage, and just sit there. And she was blind, so a lot of times she was staring at a wall or staring at a piece of equipment she didn't even know, but she was just hanging out. So when we opened up the gym, just as a joke, we were trying to figure out what the name should be, and I said we should just name it Blind Dog after Cordy. And my wife liked it, so we named it Blind Dog. And Cordy has since passed, but this is her legacy, right? So it's lived on.
So cool.
Yeah.
So cool. How'd you get into doing the whole podcast with the other stuff?
So I knew all these people from throwing and from going to seminars and just meeting people from years of lifting. Back when we came up, there wasn't internet, so you had to go and meet these people and go and hang out with them. And that was actually really beneficial because you had a relationship with these people for years. And a guy at the gym said, well, do you listen to podcasts? And I had no idea what a podcast was. So my first podcast I ever listened to was Dan Carlin's The Wrath of the Cons, which for people out there who've listened to that is just this mind-blowing, like, I could not have set a standard higher, like, oh my God, this is a podcast? I can't do this. This is epic. But he agreed to kind of be like my Sherpa for this, and he was going to be coming up with topics and answering. I was just basically going to answer questions, And then every once in a while we were going to have a guest on. And that started out that way. I think he did about 6 episodes for us and quit. So I was left with no knowledge of how to record a podcast, get it online, anything. So, but I was determined to keep it going. And I just liked having conversations with people. So I would just start inviting people on the show, and it's grown over the years. We've had some crazy guests on there, everyone from authors to athletes. We've had Jack Donovan on recently, who was the writer of The Way of Men. We've had Magnus for Magnuson on it. We've had yourself on it. Just incredible guests over the years, and everyone's been pretty good about, yeah, sure, we'll come on the show, and it's worked out. And the name Refined Savage came from my wife again, because when we were on the circuit, you were in a different town every weekend, and you competed all weekend, and then as soon as you were done competing, the promoters were all like, oh, we need to have you over at the beer tent. And they would bring you over to the beer tent, and there was always, girls and free alcohol and all this stuff. So, you kind of lived this savage lifestyle where we were constantly on the road. We didn't know where we were going to be from town to town, day to day. And, every weekend was a party with your buddies, and you were getting paid to do it. And then when I quit, my wife, was like, we were trying to come up with this name, and she's like, well, you're kind of a refined savage, because now instead of going out and partying every weekend, you're reading books and meditating and training people and all this stuff. So it just kind of became a catchphrase for us, and that's what the show turned into.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was
awesome.
just, she comes up with a lot of ideas, and I run with them. So.
Thank God.
Yeah, right?
Somebody's got to help you sort all this out.
Yeah, right.
And that I like about you too. You read a lot of books. Some of your books, I'm like, shit, I got to get to that. I got to get to that. Like you said earlier about meeting people and having that personal, so many people now think that they can learn how to do all this stuff online, and that, if they watch a podcast or listen to a podcast by somebody, or they watch a webinar, not even a webinar, but let's say a webinar, a YouTube video, an Instagram post, they think they've learned so much.
Yeah.
Now, you and I have been to Swiss even.
Yeah.
And my experience, as I'm sure was yours, was you get to listen to the presentation. These people have X amount of time to get so much information out to you. But the conversations, and everybody always said, it's what goes on, behind the scenes, and it's the connections, like you said, you make, and you sit there, and, it may not even, you may not even realize you're going to learn something. And then the guys start telling stories. Yeah. And then the next thing you know, you're like, oh, I want to know more about this, and I want to know more about that. Or, hey, you said this in your presentation, I want to know more about that. So I think like the books is the kind of like the same way. Like coming and reading those books and understanding. I know for me, when I sat at Swiss, when I was inside whatever presentation I decided to go to at that moment, it was writing down keywords that I wanted to research later, right? Because I always go in and just empty my brain. Yeah. I don't know anything because I never know what I'm going to pick up, if anything, and it's the same with those books. Like when you get to really, when someone takes as much information as they can and they put it into books, it goes so much deeper. Yeah. And you still find other ways to research it. And you write, or you read everything, like you read all kinds of
I try to get all over the map with things. Yeah. Otherwise I get bored.
So what in the last 6 months was like the book of books that you've read?
And I'm not gonna, I'm horrible with authors, but believe it or not, the Born to Run, there's a book called Born to Run, which was fantastic. And then he had a sequel to it called Natural Born Heroes, and I can't remember the author's name, but they were both books on, one was a book on running, obviously. The other one was a book more on primal movements and old ways of learning strength. But I've been getting into some of the old-time strongman, like Hackenschmidt and Farmer Burns and Arthur Saxon and these guys. And it's so funny that all the stuff that people bring out nowadays, like it's some kind of new and innovative way of training, these guys were doing years ago, like in the 1800s and early 1900s. So I get into that a lot. But those have been the big ones lately. Now, interspersed with those, I'm reading Stephen Pressfield and all these other, fictional things in there or historical things. So I kind of like to get a wide spectrum of things. I can't read training all the time. It drives me nuts. especially stuff that's new, because again, you'll look at these and go, oh shit, they were doing this years ago. Yeah. So yeah, I just try to mix it up and get a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm. And you also do jiu-jitsu.
Yes. Yes.
So tell me, when did you get started in that and why?
So I started grappling 2 years ago. I'm big into again, this is kind of a buzzword, but I'm big into the physical culture aspect of training. So if you look at all these old-time strongmen, they were swinging kettlebells and lifting dumbbells and doing gymnastics, and they were grappling. And that became something I was looking into, and I started talking to Paul Jordan out in Avon about it and about the training for it. And he said, why don't you just come out and do a class? And having been a corrections officer for 19 years, I'd been in literally hundreds of altercations, and came out okay. I thought, wow, I really know how to fight. I don't need your stinking jiu-jitsu class, So I went in there, I called him. He had a couple more days left on his vacation. I said, hey, I want to come in and try this class. He goes, well, wait till Friday, or wait till Thursday. I'm on vacation till then. I thought to myself, no. So I looked at the schedule and I saw there was a class that night, and I knew that if I didn't go tonight, I might not go at all. So I went there that night, Wednesday night, went in there and just got annihilated. I mean, guys were just beating the crap out of me. I left with a bloody mouth and my neck all torqued up. And that was a 7 p.m. class. I was in the 7 a.m. class the next day. Okay. And I said, okay, because I need to learn how to fight. Mm-hmm. And it's been a lot of fun, and it's super hard. But it's a struggle that's worth it, and it's one of those skills that I think people need to learn. And it goes along with the whole physical culture aspect of this. So I train 3 days a week because that's what I can handle. Any more than that, I start to get beat up. So I do that 3 days a week on top of my regular training. It's been great, and slowly progressing through the ranks. And you get to put your hands on people every class, and it's full go. And sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. And I think those are all good things to have happen to you too. So.
Yeah. So out of everything you've done and everything that you've seen in the fitness industry, in strength training, and all of it, what's like an important thing that you go back to as something that you remember hearing, seeing, learning, that kind of sets, always in your head repeatedly?
Yeah. Judd Logan, who's one of my mentors, has a quote that's pretty famous for anyone who knows Judd, where he says 90% of his training is set in stone, and that leaves 10% to kind of experiment every year. But 90% of what he does is set in stone. And I think that really stuck with me over the years, because what do you need? You need to hinge, you need to squat, you need to press. Those are the basics, right? And then, like we talked about, the crawling, the odd object lifting, the kettlebells, and that kind of stuff. But if you see my training, the vast majority of it is press, pull, hinge, squat. There's nothing crazy about it. Mm-hmm. Now, I look at things from, I don't look at the aesthetics of it at all. That becomes a byproduct of everything we do. So, we have 3 pillars in the gym: health, strength, and form. So, when your health is on point, then we worry about your strength, and those 2 things lead to looking better in your form. But I think that one line from Judd, that 90% is set in stone, because if you can be foundational about the vast majority of your training, then even if you want to throw new stuff in, you're not doing a complete 180 every time something new comes down the pipe. And I think you see that a lot with gyms, especially and nothing to say bad about CrossFit. I think CrossFit has been fantastic, but you'll see that with a lot of CrossFit gyms, where we're going to do this 12-week cycle of this because they read it online somewhere, and they completely abandon everything that they were doing before that might have been great. So now your people have to do this complete 180. And, even though we've changed our programming over the years, the basics are still there. They just may look a little bit different because we're shifting things around. But You can't one week decide that you're going to do a West Side Conjugate program, and then the very next 12 weeks you're going to go and try to train everyone to run a triathlon. It just doesn't work that way.
But doesn't that equal just injury? I don't understand.
Right.
You don't want to injure anybody?
Health and strength is what we're focused on, and as I've gotten older, have pushed more into the health aspect of this. And one of my favorite quotes from George Hackenschmidt is, "You can't divorce strength from health." And you know as well as I do that stronger is always better. So whatever that means to you, it doesn't mean you have to have a 400-pound bench press. It just means you have to be strong in general. And that for us, that means being able to deadlift and run and do gymnastics and swing kettlebells and all that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah. Well, even what you said, what Judd said, is you're saying that, I'm like, that applies to literally everything.
Yeah, right.
Because even your diet, 90% should be, this is your foundation, and then you sprinkle in 10% every now and then. I mean, that's how I live my life.
Yeah, 100%.
For the most part, that's how you do. I mean, we can transition this right into that. That's how I feel about my health. 90% of my supplementation is this. 10% is based off of the season, what I'm feeling at that time, what I need. This is my 90% of my foundation of my lifts are my primal movements.
Yes.
And then I sprinkle in whatever I want to, depending on how I feel or what my program is, or what I need on my accessory, if I'm falling behind on something, what I'm competing for.
Yeah.
I mean, am I competing for strongman? Am I competing for powerlifting? Am I competing for stage? What am I doing?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But the same with me as my approach was be healthy and everything else comes.
Yeah, that's huge. I think, and
huge.
it's as I've transitioned from more of that meathead mentality where I just want everyone to be strong and deadlift 400 pounds to the health aspect of it and how that plays with strength. That's been a big switch for me, and you've been part of that. You've been a big part of that. Just listening to you talk while you're digging into my various injuries, and there's been a lot of change because of that. So thank you.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. And you're doing kind of like I am right now. We're kind of like doing this carnivore sort of thing.
It's
and
been 2 years for me now.
Yeah, it's been 4.5 for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how are you feeling? I know like that's a controversial thing, but you know what, guys? This is our podcast.
Yeah.
Our little thing here, so we're going to talk about it.
So I got into this kind of weird. So when I was a pro Highland Games athlete, I was 312 pounds at the same height. I'm like 5'11". And I was always having blood sugar issues because I was just trying to get as many calories in my body as possible. And I remember this even as a kid, having blood sugar issues, and I'd have slowdowns of time and weakness, and it was just getting worse and worse and worse. So when I started to have bigger issues, like I passed out one time, and I not having any kind of scientific knowledge or anything, I said, well, this has got to be a blood sugar issue, so I'm going to cut all the sugar out of my diet. So I did that. I cut all the sugar out. And then I thought, okay, things are getting a lot better, but they're not perfect yet. So I started to realize, carbohydrates in the sugar, so I cut all the carbohydrates out. Not knowing what keto was, this was 2012, 2011. So I was basically eating fat and protein. And then I went down the keto rabbit hole and I started adding more fat to my diet. That didn't seem to have any real effect on me at all. But I need energy. I better add more fat in. So I was doing like the 75% fat. And I did that for a few years, and I was eating, I started getting into the intermittent fasting. So I was eating twice a day in an 8-hour block. And then I had heard, I think it was Sean Baker on Rogan talk about the carnivore diet. So I said, well, I'm going to try this. And I decided I was going to do it for a month, and I did it in January. And I did it for a month, and I lost like 15 pounds, and I really leaned out. And I said, well, I'm going on vacation in April, so I'm going to just extend this to April and see what happens. And I went from, I think I started that year at 260, and by the time I got to Florida for our vacation in April, I was down to 215. And my strength levels were fine, and I was just really leaning out. I think we calibrated me at like 7 point something.
6%, something like that, yeah. Body fat, 6% body fat.
And so I just stuck with it, and the more rigid I am carnivore, the better I feel and the better I look. And the thing about it is I'll play with it. Like, so, I started, like we talked about, 90% set, 10%. So I had heard about Charles Poliquin talking about the meat nut diet. So I added in some nuts, and I feel fine doing that. So I'll do that once a day. I'm down. I heard Pavel talking about the warrior diet. I looked into that. So now I eat once a day. So I eat one big meal in the evening, and that helps me too, because I am, being an ex-giant guy, I'm a huge overeater. So if you give me 3 meals a day, I will eat like a hog for 3 meals a day. So yeah, so by dropping down to 1 meal a day, I can eat as much as I want. I don't feel bad about it, and I'm not possibly going to get as many calories in as I would if I ate 3 meals a day. And I never have any problems. I'm doing basically a 23-hour-a-day fast, and this is not medical recommendation to anybody, because it's just the way my body works,
right.
you know. But it goes along with that. You just take that and you just tweak that little 10%. What's going to make me better? And I think what most people have problems with is they want to, like, I get questions on it all the time. Well, I want to try this. You have to realize the path that I went on. You can't just go from eating all this garbage to eating 1 meal a day and only protein. You know, it just doesn't work that way. And it might not work. Like, if Erin tried to eat that way, she would die, because she needs a more balanced, you know, I call it more of a paleo style diet, you know, where, you know, I can do fine on just red meat all the time.
Yeah. Well, I think I try not to put a label on any type of diet in my facility, whether people ask me what I'm doing or not, because to me it depends on the season, and we talked about that too. It depends on what my body feels like at that time. It depends on how my training is at that time. But I know for me, it was an accident how I got into it. I just decided, well, I mean, I don't know what happened one day. I just didn't want any rice. I didn't want anything. And I just kind of went down that path, and now I'm at 4 pounds of meat a day. Now I eat 3 to 4 times a day. I'm a little bit smaller than you, but as long as I eat a pound of meat each meal, I'm usually okay.
Yeah.
How much fat I add depends on what I feel like that day too, but it happened on accident as well. I didn't know what keto was. I didn't know what carnivore was. But then as those words started coming in and I started understanding, and then, you know, this was 5 years ago, I guess, about 5 years ago now. I just kind of started noticing also a lot of the people coming in my facility did much better on a lot of that, a lot of the inflammatory stuff. But you cannot, like you said, you cannot say, Adrian, how do you eat? Mark, how do you eat? How do you eat? Everybody's going to be a little bit different. Even if it looks like this, it's going to be just a tad bit different, because I don't know where I'm starting you from.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if you eat out of your car all the time, I can't just give you this.
Yeah.
You're going to fail.
Right.
Right? So you have to know how to take that person from here to there, but also know when does someone need no carbohydrates at all? Do they need some at all?
Yeah.
But like I said, I know for me, people are like, you can't be sub 9% body fat all the time. You're a female, you're this age, I do great on it.
Yeah.
I don't have any issues with anything. As a matter of fact, if I do, I always laugh and say, you know, every once in a blue moon, I'll try to do a refeed of carbs, like maybe once a month even. So let's say I decide to do steel cut oats that night. I'm like a baby in a high chair. It's so funny. I can barely get through it, and I'm just like, like I'm falling asleep eating it.
Yeah.
Because it's like, and that's why I do it at nighttime. It's like good for me to go. And if I need energy in the day, coconut oil. It's like a cup of coffee. It's crazy. It wakes me right up. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, everyone's so different, and I don't give out diet advice to people. You know me. When I'm a huge believer in stay in your lane. So I don't do any kind of diet advice. I don't do any kind of body work, mobility work. That goes to you. So when people have problems, I tell them to go see you. You know, I'm not an Olympic weightlifting coach. If you want to come in and be an Olympic weightlifter, I'm going to send you somewhere else. It's just, I lift Atlas stones, swing kettlebells, and run, and you know, if you want to eat like me, follow along, but I'm never going to recommend anything to anybody, because I just don't have the background to
sign this paper that says it's not my fault.
Right. Yeah, I know my limitations. I know what I personally think works. You can follow along, but you know, it's not a recommendation for me ever.
But I think a lot more people should say that, because I think a lot of people who do competitions and do shows and stuff like that, they try to give their diet out, or they answer those kind of questions. And I think it's just not the right thing to do, because you don't know what that person's going through, you know? And food is very emotional. I think there's a whole other side of the same as training. It's very emotional, and understanding, how to implement things in there. And we have so many different tools in our toolbox.
Yeah.
And a lot of it comes from experience. A lot of it comes from talking to other coaches. A lot of it comes from all kinds of things. So, being able to pull on those tools when we need to is really cool. You've come across a lot of different things in here, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And you're treating a lot of women too, right?
Yeah, weirdly enough, we have a lot of women in here, and it's definitely not for everybody. So we have women in here who we've basically it's just not going to be a good fit. They're just not going to. They're not going to dig the fact that they might get an abrasion on their arm from lifting Atlas stones, or it's just not a good fit for everybody. But we got a ton of women in here, and I think if you get results, whether it's a man or a woman, they're going to dig it. If they start looking better, and if you tell someone they're going to be swinging kettlebells and lifting Atlas stones, and by next summer they're going to look great in their bathing suit, they may think you're full of shit, but as long as they see their friend, it happened to her, they start coming in. So they start buying into it. And I know that 90% of the people who walk through my door, if not more, that's all they want. They just want to look good. But I'm gonna push health and strength down their throat, and they're gonna get form out of that.
Yeah. It's the same. It's like, okay, you want to look good naked, got it.
Yeah.
And I don't even deal with it.
Yeah.
The first thing is, my hip doesn't hurt anymore. This from proper strength training with proper form.
Yeah.
Right? That's how it started with me 20 years ago when I went down this path. It was like, accidentally making them feel better.
Right.
And then when people feel better, when people want to get up in the morning, then they want to come to the gym.
Yeah.
Let's be real, it's called working out.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to do this.
Yeah.
Right? But when they start to see the results and they start to notice the difference, and I think the biggest thing that I would like to say at this time, and maybe you can help, is women, please lift heavy shit. Seriously, stop running on the treadmill all the time. I am not saying running is bad for everybody or it doesn't work all the time, but if that's all you're doing, you're not going to change the shape of your body. You're not going to be able to burn more calories when you're sitting on your ass doing nothing. You're not going to be able to burn through those cheat meals, if that's what you want to call them, which I don't believe in. I don't know if you do.
No. Cheat meals for me is another steak.
Yeah, me too, right? I'm like, a cheat meal for me is more food on my table.
Yeah.
So maybe a quarter of a sweet potato, I'm like, woohoo.
Yeah.
But I don't want it, so it doesn't matter. So I think that's just lift, just train, And it's interesting, you said weirdly, but I don't know. I think women love that shit, man.
So it's easier to train them because they don't come in. The worst clients I have are the 40-year-old guys who played high school football, because they come in with all these horrible habits and problems, and I don't have to deal with that with the women. They come in and they're ready to listen, and they're willing to listen, and they progress faster, and they do things right, and it's a lot easier. So
I agree with you. 300 reps to learn at 5,000 to correct bad form.
Right, yeah, right.
So I agree. I think I always say that there should be a sign on every gym door that says for professional use only.
Yeah.
Because I think it's kind of like first of all, you're coming to me for help.
Yeah.
And then you want to tell me what I should be doing. And it's like, I'm sorry. What's it say in the back of my shirt? Coach. That's right. So, but I think it's a little bit of an ego thing. But if you can kind of get past that a little bit, I don't know if it's worse for guys training guys than girls training guys.
I think it's worse for the guy. I think we don't get as many guys in here because they don't want to come in here and be embarrassed. So the first class they come in, some girl might be deadlifting more than they are.
Yeah.
So now it's like trying to coax a squirrel over with a peanut. You don't want to make any big arm movements or anything. You're just trying to get them to come and take that peanut and realize that, okay, in a couple months you're going to be there. But it's just like me in jiu-jitsu, For that first class I went in there, I realized I didn't know how to fight, and then for like 3 months I was like, holy shit, I'm so vulnerable. And then you're like, oh, I can choke that guy out. I can choke. It's just you all of a sudden in a few months you know a lot more how to fight. You get a little bit more confidence. So
hell, I remember walking into the gym the first time and the good thing is I went with guys, so I never made it into the women's only room, and I was so intimidated. I was 87 pounds, and luckily I was naturally strong but didn't know it. And then, once I started adding form to that and then getting more into correctives to fix my spine, and then realizing how my weights went, but no, I was not happy when I first walked
Yeah.
in there. I was scared, I was nervous, we all are. But that's the cool thing about having the facilities that we do, is we can get their feet wet
Yeah.
with education, so they don't get hurt, they don't get injured, they like it, they want to do it. And you know what? That's the other thing. There is a science to program design.
Oh yeah.
There is something behind program design. You can't just throw it together. And each individual, just like with food, diet is 100% individual. Everything is going to respond differently because it's a human body. It's the same with training.
Yeah.
I don't think that everybody should be doing everybody's workout that. I can't do
Right.
that, you know, but there are ways to change it. And the thing about you here even is, I'm sure if you see somebody doing a lift that's not for them, it's easy to take them over and say, okay, how about we break you
Super
down
easy.
this way?
Yeah, super easy. And that's the thing, is people really, think that they're going to have to, do some huge lift when they come in there. But we'll have grandmothers, instead of lifting an Atlas stone, or lifting a medicine ball, or if they can't even do that, there's always an option. Again, if you stick with that hinge, squat, press, there's so many options within that, and it's easy.
Yeah, so I think the word of wisdom there is, your best thing to do is to go into a smaller facility,
Yeah.
get a coach if you've
Yep.
never been into a gym, learn, and then grow your wings.
Well, that's
if you
why we
to.
have a fitness industry that's based on people paying $30 a month and never getting any better. So they constantly have to, the best thing that I can do is, after a couple years of learning this, you get some kettlebells in your garage and you can do this shit on your own. That's a good compliment for me. But it's no different than me going into a restaurant and cooking my own food. I rely on that chef because I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know why people think it's any different when you walk into a fitness facility. You need that Sherpa, you need that guide to show you where you're going. And I mean, you can do it on your own, but it's going to take way longer and end up being more expensive in the end, and nowhere near as effective. And we only have so much time. Let's
I
get
know,
it done.
I know. I want to see results yesterday
Yeah,
for today.
yeah,
so
yeah.
I know that was huge for me when I started learning to put things together. And luckily for me, I met Poliquin and everybody
Yeah.
so early. So, I wouldn't be lifting what I lift. I wouldn't have the muscle mass that I
Right.
do. I mean, it took me 20 years, let's be real, but I've never had an injury. I fixed my scoliosis, and I'm lifting heavy shit
Yeah.
at my age, and I'm fine, but it took time. And I think it's just like anything else, like you said, I want somebody to guide me. I don't want to do something my own that I don't know what to
Yeah.
do.
Yep.
And so instead of wasting time, I hear a lot, this happens to me too. Wait till I get in shape and then I'll come to you.
Oh, God,
please
all the time.
don't.
Yeah.
Don't, So guys, get out here to Mark's place.
Yeah.
Lift some heavy shit. He'll guide you in all the weight raise. And I like that you said, we stay in our lane. We have a
Yeah.
Rolodex full of people.
Yes.
And we have like really good people on our Rolodex.
Yep.
Like, let's be real. We've got like the gold ones.
Yeah.
So we'll get you to where you need to be. Words of wisdom. What's like the biggest thing you've ever taken out of training?
Yeah, it's taken me probably all 47 years of my life to figure this out. And well, maybe the last 6 or 7 I figured this out is, be like water. The Bruce Lee saying, everything works. It's all preference, and within reason everything works. But if you're the type of guy who wants to go in and do some golden era bodybuilding stuff and just get after it and do your curls and pull-ups, and that's awesome, because it's going to work for you. You know what else will work? Lifting Atlas stones and running. If you're into CrossFit and you want to get into that, whatever's going to get you off the couch, the harder you work at it, the better you'll get, and it all works, within reason. But that's my philosophy, is be like water. Just everything, take that that shotgun approach, and then whittle it back to the things that work and get rid of the things that don't.
The 90-10.
90-10, absolutely.
There
John
you go.
Logan, he's a smart guy.
All right, well, guys, if you guys ever want to reach out to Mark, website?
The website is BlindDogGym.com, but I'm on Instagram at RefinedSavageActual, and the gym page is at BlindDogStrong.
Nice. And if you guys have any questions directly to him that you can't find his stuff or whatever, you just want to put it at the bottom of this, it's fine. We'll put links to everything underneath here.
Cool.
And thanks, guys, so much. And I hope you guys come out and experience this. If you're in the area, you got to come out here and throw some heavy stuff around with Mark. It's really fun. All right, guys. See ya.
Yeah.
117